Ladies and gentlemen, ladies and gentlemen, ladies and gentlemen, it's my pleasure to welcome you to the 21st Winchester Chamber of Commerce dinner honoring the Outstanding Citizen of the Year. And tonight I would like to have Father Foley do the invocation. Father Foley.
I read a blurb in a church bulletin the other day that said, when the Lord comes again, I'll miss him because I'll probably be in a meeting. And perhaps Ed O'Connell worried about that.
I was the author of that.
I knew that no one would speak here for more than 30 seconds without Ed interjecting. But Ed doesn't have to worry about that anymore, thankfully. And he enjoys his retirement now from all of these many committees that he's been so vigorously involved in. But as we gather this evening to honor this outstanding citizen, we begin with a prayer. Lord, we thank you this evening for bringing us together to honor this wonderful gift you've shared with us in Ed O'Connell over these past 31 years here in Winchester. We thank you for all that he has done for us through his volunteerism and spirit of good citizenship here in Winchester, of course, but in other places as well. He's been a patriotic citizen of our country, and he's been a valuable citizen in the international community through his work in foreign service, and in many other areas, many that aren't known to us. And we trust and pray, Lord, that he's been a loyal citizen in your kingdom, a kingdom which is to come, but which is already here, because of the goodness and the lives of so many, like Ed O'Connell. A kingdom of truth and love, a kingdom of justice and peace. And so as we thank you, Lord, for the many gifts of Ed O'Connell that he has shared so freely with us, we pray your blessings upon him, upon his wife Barbara, who was responsible for making Ed's service possible. Blessings upon their family gathered here with them, and upon us all, this community of Winchester. And we ask your blessings upon us and upon this meal we're about to share through Christ our Lord. Amen.
Thank you, Father. Ed O'Connell, before I introduce, ladies and gentlemen, before I introduce the man of the hour, I should state that Father Foley and Ed share something in common. Ed, as you know, served on 3 boards, the library boards, 3 elected boards, the Board of Selectmen, and the school committee. There are very few people, if any, that have served on those 3 elected boards in the history of Winchester. And the good father shares a similar heritage. He has served in St. Eulalia's Parish, and then he served as a curate down in St. Mary's Parish, and he's currently serving as the pastor of the Immaculate Conception Parish here in Winchester. Unlike Ed, he's also considering an offer right now to become the head of the First Congregational Church. Ladies and gentlemen, there's no better way to begin the evening than by introducing somebody who's the focus of our attention this evening, and somebody who has dedicated over 31 years to the town of Winchester, not to mention his dedication to his family, to Tufts University, and to the United States government. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my great pleasure and honor to introduce the man of the hour, Edward O'Connell. Edward O'Connell. Ed just turned to me and said, "That's it? It's going to be a long night." Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to take this opportunity before we start eating to introduce the rest of the O'Connell family. And first of all, somebody that we all know, those of us who have worked and lived and worked for town government here in Winchester, his lovely wife, Barbara. Barbara? And next, I'd like to recognize Consuelo Donahue. Where's Consuelo? Yeah, she's coming. And her husband, Richard. And just to show that Ed is not the only person who has an ability in Spanish, his daughter, the daughter of Richard and Consuelo, is also named Consuelo, but Ed refers to her as Consuelito. Consuelito. And next, but certainly by no means least, someone who many of you know, Eddie O'Connell, the son. And his lovely wife, Catherine. Catherine? And then three of the grandchildren. First, Charlene. And the second one is Barbara. You got the right name, Barbara. You're going to be in the will, I'm sure. And last, but by no means least, the smallest member, May Chu. Ladies and gentlemen, what we're going to do here this evening...
John, we got a last entry. You just come up from BMI.
It's too late. He wasn't on the list. Eddie O'Connell Donahue. I'm not really sure of my facts, Eddie, but I think the story I had was that you're a sophomore at VMI, freshman, and you were over in Spain. Is that correct? That's the other one. Well, thanks for coming anyway. He probably wouldn't pay for the ticket. Well, ladies and gentlemen, what we're going to do this evening is that we have, we paid some folks to come and say a few words, and we got a few of them. And so during the dinner, we're going to actually continue the speaking program right through the dinner. And I've told the serving help, and Kathy Alexander is going to make sure they understand that it's perfectly appropriate for them to serve during any speaking and perfectly appropriate for you to eat. And I hope that we won't interrupt your meal too much, but I think that way, maybe we can get out of here by 7:30. So please enjoy your meal.
Have you ever dreamed of having your own TV show? Now you can. The Winchester Channel is currently offering free television workshops for you, the community members of Winchester. Call 721-2050 for details. Don't just watch TV, make TV. Only at the Winchester Channel.
Recently, several times on Nesson. Paul Casey. Paul?
Thanks, John. He obviously realized I'm a professional boxing referee, and he's seen me conducting fights. So I appreciate that, John. One form or other. It's so often, Ed, and I just want to congratulate you again. Ed, I think this is about the 5th time we've been at a congratulatory session or celebration for you. Like Mark Twain, one good compliment can last you 2 whole years. But in many ways, Ed, I can't help bringing out Cincinnatus and what so many times that you've quoted in your heroes in the past. And I happen to have a gift other than, and I do have a resolution which I'll read, but I'd love to just read to the audience someone who is a hero to you, and this is a book I'm obviously going to present to you, Ed, but it was one thing that President Kennedy said on the obligation of citizenship, and I think, Ed, you've lived it to a T, you epitomize this, but isn't it interesting that President Kennedy said, I've tried to make the whole tone and thrust of this office and this administration one that will demand a higher standard of excellence from every individual in his private life, in his education, his physical fitness, his attitude towards foreign visitors, his obligations as a citizen, and all the rest. And Ed, I've just kind of highlighted that. It's not a secondhand book yet, it's new, but I did highlight that. Your mother would admit it was secondhand. But so often, Ed, you've risen to the call, and so often you've given not just to our country, not just to our state, but not just to a university, but also to this little town. And you've always been there, Ed. And as you go back to the plow, sort of speaking, we're going to call upon you in the future, Ed, because your job isn't done yet. And we do want to wish you all the best, and particularly congratulations for this well-deserved honor. Now, I do have a resolution, Ed, and it reads in part, and I'll be brief because I think there are going to be some additions added by my friend and colleague, Senator Shannon, but we both have resolutions for you, and they read in part, Ed. Whereas the esteemed Edward O'Connell has been named Citizen of the Year by the Winchester Chamber of Commerce and will be honored by family and friends on this day, May 17, 2000. And whereas Ed O'Connell has served the community of Winchester with distinction for, and we had 32 years as a member of numerous boards and committees, he has been a distinguished member of the Board of Selectmen, a valued town meeting member, and served 15 consecutive years on the school committee. And whereas Ed O'Connell was selected for his initiative in seeking to make his community a better place to live, he has demonstrated a level of commitment and accomplishment that is truly extraordinary in today's world and deserves our sincere admiration and respect. And whereas Ed O'Connell, throughout his illustrious career, has been known to many as a civic leader, a committee member, dauntless fundraiser, teacher, coach, diplomat, charitable organizer, and loving and devoted husband to his wife Barbara, and wonderful father. Whereas epitomizing the highest ideals of humanity and service to one's fellow man, Edward O'Connell is a deserving recipient for the coveted and prestigious title of Citizen of the Year. Therefore, be it resolved that the Massachusetts House of Representatives, there's always a little kicker, hereby congratulates Edward O'Connell upon his memorable occasion of his selection as Citizen of the Year and extends its sincere best wishes for continued success in his future endeavors, and be it further resolved that a copy of these resolutions be forwarded to the Clerk of the House of Representatives, to Ed O'Connell, and that's signed by Tom Finneran, myself, Ed, and Steve James, as Clerk of the Court. We'd like to thank you, Ed.
I gotta say 2 things. I've been to Cincinnati recently. And yes, your words are correct. I have always demanded excellence of others.
Now you know why the State House is open after midnight. Thank you, Paul. Next, ladies and gentlemen, we hear from the Massachusetts Senate, Senator Charles Shannon. Senator Shannon.
Thank you, John. Thank you. Eddie, this is from the Senate, the resolution, but this is from a well-known and documented individual that's close to you. So it may be a little wordy, but it means a lot to the family. Eddie O'Connell began his public service career in the town of Winchester in 1968.
Eddie O'Connell was a trustee of the Winchester Public Library from 68 to 76 and served as chairman from 73 to 74 when he dispensed with all those that owed money to the library. O'Connell served as a Winchester Town Meeting member since 73 and was a member of the Board of Selectmen from 76 to 85, serving as chairman 70, 81, 83, and Eddie O'Connell, a veteran of World War II and a former commander of the VFW, Post 3719, annually organizes the Memorial Day and Veterans Day Parade, and Eddie O'Connell was a member of the Winchester School Committee from 85 to 2000, serving as a chairman in 85 and in 89. And Mr. O'Connell served as a member of the Committee on Names in 85, the Housing Partnership Board in 93, an incorporator of the Winchester Hospital, and is a trustee of the Melissa Mason Scholarship Foundation. And whereas Edward O'Connell served as chairman of the Education Collaborative for the Greater Boston from 1995 to 1997. Eddie O'Connell's professional experience have included careers as a coach, Foreign Service Officer for the United States Department of State, with tours of duty in Panama, England, the Congo, and the Ivory Coast, as well as having been an assistant dean of the Fletcher School of Law and Diplomacy and a professor at Tufts University in Medford. And Eddie O'Connell has been the Federal Selective Service Officer for the town of Winchester for over 20 years. Eddie O'Connell has been a Special Deputy Sheriff for Middlesex County for 20 years. No pension, Eddie. And Eddie O'Connell was an outstanding track athlete and long-distance runner for the Tufts University, the Boston Athletic Association, who, as president of the Road Runners Club of America, sanctions the first marathon in America that allowed female runners to compete. And whereas Eddie O'Connell has served on the board of the Cardinal Center since 1974 and was chairman from 1985 to 1990, now therefore be it resolved that the Senate congratulates Eddie O'Connell on his distinguished career of public service during the years and offer him its sincere best wishes, good health, and success in all future endeavors. This copy has been signed by the President of the Senate, Tom Birmingham, and myself. Eddie, best of luck to you and the family.
I gotta tell you one thing. Two of those female runners who competed in the first marathon that I sanctioned for female marathoners to compete, two of those females beat me that day. That is gratitude.
Thank you very much, Senator. Did you notice that the Senate has a frame and the House doesn't? Ladies and gentlemen, while you're eating, I'll just, you know, a lot of us know a lot about each other and what our public endeavors are, but most of us don't know the trails that we've crossed in our other life, either work life or family life. And so I asked Ed if he would be so kind as to fax me a resume. And Ed visited my office and delivered his resume to me. And it's entitled, The Life and Times of Edward F. O'Connell, parentheses, R.I.P., end parentheses. And this is his words. And I just want to read two phrases to you, but it does kind of give you an overview of Ed's life. And Ed's life has revolved around running for office and running. And here is the first paragraph. Graduate of Boston College High School of Commerce, where I was captain of the track team 2 years and held the school record for the 1,000-yard run. Was also colonel of the military regiment, president of the student council, editor-in-chief of the school magazine, editor-in-chief of the yearbook, and a member of the debating team. Although I did not know it at the time, I was to learn later in life that I had peaked in high school. And these are, I swear to God, these are his words. And I wouldn't say, and I mean, you can read this, and I'm not going to read it all, because some of it is a little bit self-serving. He joined the Army at age 17, during the big one, serving 2.5 years, mostly on perilous islands of Caraco, Aruba, and Aruba and Puerto Rico. Tough duty, could have gone any minute. After discharge from the Army, I entered Tufts, which at the time was under legendary coach Ding Dussault. They had the best track team in New England. I captained the cross-country team 2 years and broke the university record for the mile. I earned 11 varsity letters while also managing to get a degree with honors. In 1951, I married Barbara Bergolia. Bergolia. From Cambridge, whom I had met at Tufts. Her grandfather, Larry Bergolia, had won the Boston Marathon in 1899. To get access to his coaching advice, I was prepared to accept Barbara as is. Barbara, this dinner should be for you. Now, the resume goes on, and I'm already boring myself. But the resume goes on to say that he spent a couple of years teaching Spanish and French and coaching cross-country at Tufts. But then in 1954, he takes an exam, and there is some rumors around that he had it in advance, but he gets selected to go to the United States Foreign Service Officer School, where he graduates with honors, and his first assignment was in Panama. And as you heard from the Senate citation that he wrote, he served in Panama, he served in London, the Republic of the Congo, Ivory Coast, and later on was selected by the dean of the Fletcher School to become the assistant dean of the Fletcher School, where he served for many years, closing out his career after that for the U.S. government by working for the Department of Education. And I share that brief resume. That's the part of his life that you and I have not really heard and appreciated his contribution to the United States government. Those many years in places that at the time were under major unrest, political unrest. So kicking off a review of what he's done here, we have some speakers, and the next speaker is a member of the school committee who served with Ed for many years, Eli Bortman. Mr. Bortman.
Thank you, John. It's nice to be the warm-up act for this evening's festivities. And it's really an honor and a pleasure to be here to say a few kind words about you and to thank you for your service. I will say, though, that as much as I was looking forward to this evening, I found it really depressing to prepare some remarks this evening, because I thought that the major theme ought to be how long have I known Ed? When did I first meet Ed? When did I first have some dealings with him? And that made me feel awfully old. It was a very long time ago, Ed. It's ironic, actually. I got to be reminded of it just a few weeks ago during the election, because you and I were on that first committee that went and bought this land from Squaw Sachem. It's also the first time that Ed and I had a difference of opinion on a political matter, because I was interested in making sure that we had an override first, so that we could afford it. Actually, though, I think my first recollection of you, Ed, was someone just mentioned in the late 1970s, I guess when you were chairman of the Board of Selectmen, and I was a young town meeting member, and I guess my first exposure to you was on the opening night of town meeting when you came in, as you always did, with some story that sounded perfectly plausible, a perfectly sensible description of some recent event, and it ended up with some little zinger that had everybody rolling in the aisle. And I still remember that story. I won't embarrass you by telling it this evening, because I think the police officer that was involved is probably here also. But since then, for the last 7 or 8 years, I've had the pleasure of serving with you on the school committee. It has been wonderful. You and I started on opposite ends of the political spectrum. We've had a few laughs recently when we noticed that occasionally we voted together on some issues, and it's been wonderful. And I will say this, We're going to miss your good humor at the school committee. Honestly, Ed, the rest of those people are so serious. And one further thought. For the last 7 or 8 years, people have looked at you as that old guy on the school committee, and now you're not there anymore. So again, congratulations, and it's been fun. Thank you.
And then, ladies and gentlemen, turning to Ed's life as a selectman, I think Ed got elected as a selectman in 1976. Is that right, Edward?
Right.
Good memory, huh?
You were there, John.
Yeah. I was there, but I left on account of it. Yeah. I was followed by Dick Wilsack. Is Dick here? Dick. Ed and I go back 47 years ago. I was a aspiring track runner for Malden High, and the better track in Malden was at Brother Gilbert Stadium, and some of the better athletes were at Malden Catholic. And Ed was the coach, and our paths crossed there. And then 15 years later, before the running boom, Ed and I entered a series of races, and we've run many times together. And with one exception, Ed always crossed the finish line before me. That single exception was at Fresh Pond, where Ed was tripped at the start of the race. They stopped the race. They carted Ed off to the hospital with a broken collarbone. That time, I did finish ahead of Ed.
You also tripped me.
Now, this is my nickel. You can speak later. I never got close enough to Ed to trip him, you know. So he's been teasing me for not quite, well, at least 30 years about that tripping incident, but it's not true. As been mentioned, Ed was a terrific runner. And I learned recently that Steve Powers was too, to my, I thought he was standing in the Hall of Fame for some other, hosting event. There he's a great runner for Winchester Cross Country. But Ed held a mile record at Tufts University for many years and was a gifted runner. But the greatest decision that Ed ever made was one that's been touched upon, and that was his decision to ask Barbara for a hand in marriage. Because there's an expression, every great man has a great woman behind, and no one befits that better than Barbara O'Connell. Only she knows what's... In many ways, Ed was my mentor and my role model. We started out in town meeting, and he was elected in 1976 to the Board of Selectmen, and I was elected in '77. And many of you who have served on town boards recognize that sometimes the only support you have is from the 5 or 6 other members that are serving with you. And we had a wonderful board, and I understand Wade Welch is probably going to comment on it later. But there were many things in Winchester, as I look back on, that started when we were on the board, the prior boards and the ones that followed us. This is a great town. And another decision that both Ed and I made is we weren't born in Winchester, we chose Winchester. And someday, both of us will be up in Wildwood together. So, probably.
Well, I'll let you lead that race again, Ed. In 1982, when Barb and I decided that we were going to bring our 5 sons together in marriage, the man that I asked to stand up for me was Ed O'Connell. And he gave a wonderful speech, as he does at every event I've ever been. And as I listened to Ed over the years and closed my eyes, he really reminds me more of the wit and the language that JFK had. There are many impersonators of JFK, but Ed comes the closest in the real world to epitomizing what John F. K. said and did. In 1994, we've been together. I think I've attended most of the christenings in the O'Connell's family. And 3 years ago, I was blessed to join the O'Connell family. Mei Chu is my godchild, so I'm not only a family friend, but a member of the family now, joined together. Ed is my dearest friend in life, and I appreciate and recognize the wonderful tribute this is to Ed and his family. In 1994, when the Catholic Church welcomed Barbara and I back into the church, I called Ed and Barbara one very dark night in February, and they had some inkling that there was problems in Washington. But in that time, Ed, when I asked about our impending renewal of vows, Ed said, "I will be with you wherever." And as we know, that later that night was probably the lowest point in Barbara and Ed O'Connell's life, but he still had the grace and strength to be with me when I most needed to be with him. So I thank you for this great honor, and I wish the O'Connell family many good years, because they've certainly contributed to the strength and vitality of a great town, Winchester. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, they're starting to bring out the food, but we'll just keep on going, because only the front tables have got these are probably the non-paid seats have got food. All the people from the chamber over here, they're eating well, and Officer Mon got fed. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to introduce the current chairperson of the Winchester Board of Selectmen, Priscilla McPhee. Priscilla.
Ladies and gentlemen and honored guests, we borrow an old adage. We come here this evening to praise Caesar, not to bury him. It is an honor to be able to join in the recognition of a unique individual who truly epitomizes the meaning of citizen volunteer. Ed's legacy of service, when you combine his numerous terms on both elected and appointed boards and committees, as well as his many community organizations, has few peers. Many will acknowledge that such willingness to commit the time and effort, as well as the sacrifice of family time and loss of private life on behalf of serving the greater needs of the community, is a noble pursuit. However, as evidenced by my contemporaries, it's one that only a few are now willing to embrace. So as Ed assumes a less visible presence on the stage of public service, We applaud his myriad contributions to making Winchester a better place for all of us, and we look forward to his continued lively participation and wily comment on our meager efforts. Congratulations, Ed. I have a citation from the Board of Selectmen, and it reads, "The entire membership extends its very best wishes and expresses the hope for future good fortune and continued success in all endeavors. Be it hereby known to all that the Board of Selectmen of the Town of Winchester hereby offers its sincerest congratulations to Edward F. O'Connell in recognition of being named Winchester's 21st Outstanding Citizen of the Year." Thank you.
Interestingly enough, the vote, Ed, was 2 for, 2 against, and 1 abstention. I couldn't resist it. I said I couldn't resist that, and Ed said, yes, you could. Ladies and gentlemen, it's not very often that you get a chance to introduce one of your own relatives. Making the next presentation, I'd like to introduce Brian Sullivan, the new town manager. Brian.
Thank you, John. Ed O'Connell, your family, friends, guests. Being new to the town here, I've only known Ed O'Connell for a few weeks at this point, but in that short period of time, I've come to realize what an extraordinary man. Oops. Let's try that again. Being new to town, I've only known Ed for a few weeks now, but in that short period of time, I've come to realize what an extraordinary man Ed is. My respect for Ed grew to awe when I started doing some research on Ed's background. Indeed, it's a humbling experience for me when I reviewed Ed's curriculum vitae and all his accomplishments. He graduated from Boston Commerce High School in 1944, and at the age of 17 enlisted in the Army. After the Army, Ed went into college at Tufts, where he graduated in 1950. He then went on to get his master's at Boston University, followed by additional studies of African affairs at Oxford University. Ed spent 15 years at the U.S. Department of State, with Foreign Service stints in Panama, England, the Congo, Ivory Coast, and Washington, D.C. Although I'm not exactly sure what Ed did at the State Department, it was heavily rumored that he was into the intelligence foreign agent business. While at the State Department, Ed was recipient of the State Department's Distinguished Service Award, one of the highest awards awarded by the State Department. After the State Department, Ed served as Assistant Dean at the Fletcher School of Law and Diplomacy at Tufts for 15 years. Ed finished his career as Deputy Regional Director of the U.S. Department of Education. From high school on, Ed was a competitive runner, a super athlete. He was captain of his high school track team and went on to be a star athlete and runner at Tufts. He anchored an undefeated Tufts team and held the Tufts record for the mile at 4.14. He won 2 national championships, the New York and Panamanian marathons. When you think about it, all this early training, experience, and running, and in foreign intrigue and clandestine activities, Ed certainly was served well in Winchester politics. In terms of Ed's community service, the list goes on for pages. It is now at 31 years and counting. He spent 9 years on the Board of Selectmen and was chair 3 times, 7 years on the Board of Library Trustees, 15 years on the school committee, town meeting member since 1973, Capital Planning Committee, Housing Partnership Board. He was an incorporator of the Winchester Hospital, the 150th Celebration Committee, and the Committee on Names. Although I'm not sure what the Committee on Names does, but I do know that Ed certainly had a lot of experience in calling people names during his years in politics. When I considered this extraordinary level of service, I asked myself, what would drive Ed to put himself through this? 31 years of service, volunteer service, attending hundreds, literally hundreds of evening meetings, and putting in countless hours and getting abused very often at those meetings. I came to the conclusion I had to either be one of two things. The fall he took on his head as a child, or Ed never left the Foreign Service and was sent to Winchester to disrupt the government here. I mean, how else do you explain these headlines shortly after Ed joined the school committee? School committee in scuffle. The committee clears the air. School board clashes on new appointments. School budget goes bust. Budget talks take a toll on school committee. Town meeting holds school budget hostage. All kidding aside, I think Winchester indeed is fortunate to have a citizen like Ed O'Connell amongst us. And I've taken an opportunity to put together some of the pictures of Ed's career starting back in his high school days, and I thought it would be fun and I think interesting to most of us here if we just took a look at a few of the pictures. Starting with the first picture, this is Ed at Commerce High School track team photo from 1943, where Ed was captain of the team. The next photo, I hope I'm on track here, shows Ed as the editor of the high school magazine. The next photo is of Ed's championship track team at Tufts University. And the next one is Ed receiving congratulations from his then girlfriend, Barbara, for winning the 1 mile run for Tufts. Just want to know, Barbara, how old were you in that picture there? Look awfully young. And then the next picture, which was referred to earlier this evening, shows Ed receiving a few tips from Barbara's grandfather, Larry Brignolia. Larry, again, was the winner of the 1899 Boston Marathon.
He was 78 years old then.
Wow.
I was 74.
And the next picture is a 1944 high school picture of Ed's friend and competitor, Johnny Kelly. While Ed managed to beat just about everyone around, try as he might, however, he could never seem to beat Johnny Kelly. That was until the next photo. This shows Ed finally beating Johnny in a race.
I'm going to call a foul on this.
Ed was later disqualified, however, for tripping Johnny on that one. And here's a later photo of Ed with fellow running mates and BAA members, Johnny Kelly and Ted Vogel, who I believe was a college classmate.
Vogel was a college teammate of mine, and he was a member of the 1948 Olympic team to London in the marathon. And that's old John Kelly on my class.
Yeah. And the next photo is a photo of Ed in his Army uniform right out of high school, going into service. The next one, we all know how Ed loves a parade. Well, this one shows how Ed started out in his parades. Here is Ed in his uniform marching solo at the Boston Schoolboy Parade.
The Boston Schoolboy Parade.
Yeah.
I was actually in the Army at the time, and I had to get permission to come home and to get out of my Army uniform and put on my high school colonel's uniform. And I was leading the parade, but you can see the spectators were always looking behind me.
That's because the parade stopped a mile behind you, Ed. And then we talked about Ed being in the service. Ed was involved in some hot action at the front lines, as you can see from this next picture. The front lines of the Caribbean beaches, that is. Ed said the job was tough, but someone had to protect those rum supplies. And then the next photo, Ed is receiving a Distinguished Service Award, the highest award given by the Tufts Alumni Association. That was back in 1976. Next one shows Ed in a campaign photo, his first run for the Board of Selectmen in 1976. And here, the next one, Ed poses with his wife Barbara and daughter Consuelo after one of his many election victories. Ed ran 11 times for various offices, and every one of them he won. Never lost an election. And the next one here shows Ed conferring with the first town manager here, Tom Grew. And then the next couple of photos shows Ed leading the Memorial Day exercises, this one and the next one. Yeah? And the next one, an interesting one, showing Ed with President Clinton. I believe Ed was lecturing the president on some foreign policy issue, were you, Ed?
I was discussing the Asian situation at the time. I won't tell you what I know.
And then finally, Ed here shown introducing Monica Lewinsky to the president. I told you that Ed was a foreign agent. And then finally, we have one Ed at one of his favorite activities here at a parade with his grandchildren. Ed, if you would join me up at the podium, I just have a couple of presentations to you this time.
Thank you much, Brian.
Well, as you know, that Ed is the leader of our Memorial Day Parade, and it's coming up very shortly, and I thought it was very appropriate that we provide this attire to Ed as he leads our parade. Ed, a very suitable hat for you, Ed. And then, Ed, I know you have a signature black tie that has a lot of meaning to you. In this case, we've created a black tie that has an American flag that you can wear at the Memorial Day Parade.
I appreciate it. And I will bring that hanging in the booth. Thank you.
It was called the greatest generation any society has ever produced. They were ordinary people who half a century ago did nothing less than help save the world. Millions served in uniform, millions more served at home, and nearly 500,000 gave their lives. And yet there is no national memorial to honor their sacrifice. It is time to say thank you.
Call now and help build the National World War II Memorial.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Town meeting members, actually, I guess that isn't appropriate. Well, I would like to say a few words seriously first before I read the poem that I wrote for Ed. It's been a pleasure working with you, Ed, for the last 5 years while I've been superintendent. And one of the things that always made our meetings fun and exciting was that you really never knew what Ed was going to say. And well, that's good, that's good. And so, but that really made for honest and open meetings and very open and honest discussions. And I really have appreciated it. And for all of the support on some very difficult issues. Now for my poem. Ode to Ed. There is a young man called Ed. He is really very well fed. He's run as fast as can be, so skinny as a rail is he. When Barbara calls, "Oh, sweetie," he quickly heads for home quite fleetly. She's the apple of his eye, although I know that fact he will deny. His grandkids are well loved with great pride. He best loves the times when they're right by his side. He's a Francophile through and through, and celebrates those French holidays with Chateau Bonbrou. Though from the Board of Selectmen he has flown, his reputation is very well known. The selectmen today could use dear old Ed, for their collective sense of humor is dead. They haven't recovered from FinCom's rulings, but thank God most of them are no longer drooling. From the school committee, he has also fled. Many a battle he fought for kids with a clear head. His wit and his humor are known far and wide, and nothing is sacred when wisecracks collide. At town meetings, when Ed stands to be heard, even John Sullivan quakes and can't say a word. Of our two State House guys, our Ed always thought, they really get more photo ops than they ought. Now what thoughts of our new town manager, Brian, our Ed might be having, none of us will know till we be dying. Whenever a contract came forth at the table, only one phrase did Ed utter: call Wade Welch and get a ruling, or I'll be in a flutter. The art of compromise and negotiation is a skill of which he is proud, and he's kept many a person from screaming out loud. For example, of the EFPBC, he did think that everyone else was making a big stink. The Battle of the Sachem he fought with great gusto. Everyone knows that Ed is never politically correcto. Always known as our resident grammarian with corrections galore, we prepared minutes anticipating blood and much gore. The discussion of substitute teachers was not to be missed because dear old Ed was surely pissed. Always waiting for him to drop a bomb on TV, his constituents just had to tune in for a look-see. We never knew what to expect when the cameras did run, but surely there'd be more than one pun. Poor Ed does not watch the meetings, that's no fable. Is he too cheap to pay for the cable? Did you ever try to call our man of the year? Good luck to you. The cost of the phone machine is just too dear. In truth, he hates the new technology, and of the internet he wonders what's left in the world just to ponder. His schedule is crammed even now. He's out there fighting for good causes and how. Patriotic to a fault is our pal Ed. We'll march till we're all good and dead. His political prowess is famous in town, for he never played town versus gown. My little limerick is just about complete, and our honor to Ed will not be beat. Winchester will always be your oyster. How could you ask for moister? Congratulations, Ed. I have a little gift for you. This is a traditional gift that goes to all of our faculty and staff when they retire from the school system. So we thought that Ed O'Connell would like to receive the same gift. And it says, Winchester School Committee, Edward O'Connell, 1985 to 2000. So you can ring it.
Want me to leave a copy? Yeah.
Thank you very much, Dr. Eden. Next, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to introduce former school superintendent Bob Fitzgerald, a good friend of mine. Where's Bob? Hey, I didn't get any cake.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. John, as usual, is very modest. He left one person off the past recipient list, and that was his own name in 1984, John Sullivan. Ladies and gentlemen, I've been asked to speak to you tonight by a previous school committee. The vote was 3-2 in favor of my doing so. The directions were to be brief, discreet, non-combative, politically correct, and restrained. Characteristics, the committee said, that best described Winchester's Citizen of the Year. With those characteristics in mind, I immediately put together a brilliant talk on Sandy Thompson. Only to find out this morning that that dinner has already been held and that tonight's affair is for Ed O'Connell. For those of you who don't know Ed, and I can't imagine spending $40 to come to a dinner if I didn't know the guy. Ed is the guy who, if you watch a school committee meeting on TV, appears to be on the left. But if you're sitting at the table, believe me, he's on the right. I first met Mr. O'Connell when I was 17. He was 62 at the time. We were very early into our first conversation when I made my first mistake with Ed. I commented on seeing him circling the Mystic Lakes in sneakers, shorts, and shirt, and asked if he enjoyed jogging. Whereupon he informed me that he was not a jogger, he was a runner. Several years later, when I was 37 and principal of Lynch Junior High School and Ed was still 62, he asked me to write a report for the Board of Selectmen on the English curriculum at the junior high school. It was at this point that I made my second mistake. I asked him if spelling counted. Anyone who's ever watched a school committee meeting and heard Ed's response to the question, are there any additions or corrections to the minutes, knows full well that spelling counts. My third mistake came when I was 55 and Ed was still 62. I asked if he'd like to speak briefly to a group of French students and their chaperones who were visiting Winchester. Ed agreed, and after my feeble and smug introduction of Je m'appelle Robert, Ed launched into a not-so-brief welcome, all in French, that had the visiting students giggling, the visiting chaperones smiling, and the Winchester High School French teachers holding their breath. I don't know what he said. How was I to know he spoke fluent French? Now, I don't consider myself to be a slow learner. But a couple of years later, I asked Ed if he'd like to speak briefly to a group of visiting students from Spain and the visiting chaperones. That was my fourth mistake. How was I to know that he was as funny in Spanish as he apparently was in French? He's not that funny in English. I think Barbara just said that I'd made my fifth mistake. This is Ed's night, but as one who has observed Barbara's work as a teacher in the Winchester Public Schools during the past 30 years, I have to tell you that she's made some pretty fantastic contributions to Winchester in her own right, and we need to thank her as well. Thanks, Barbara. In the spirit of this age of top 10 lists, I was going to tell you the 10 of the worst jokes Ed has ever told. However, I found that the list was so long I couldn't limit them to 10. Ed's a great choice for Citizen of the Year. What you see is what you get with Ed O'Connell. He is and always has been a respected citizen of the Winchester community. He's been a force in Winchester for longer than I can remember and probably longer than anyone can remember. He's a skillful negotiator, a knowledgeable and informed educator, a great ambassador for Winchester, and a dedicated public servant. His commitment to fair play and honesty is well known in the school department. Secretaries, custodians, administrators, and teachers have all turned to him at one time or another to resolve problems that they've encountered. Not everyone's on the same page as Ed, but everyone respects his opinions, and just as he shows respect for the opinions of others. Ed's leadership ability is well documented. His commitment to public education has been a hallmark of his service on the Winchester School Committee. He's always kept the interest of students high on his list of priorities. He has compromised when compromise was called for, and he's held his ground when he felt it was necessary to do so. He has the ability to diffuse tense situations and to bring people with divergent points of view together. He is quick to put people at ease. He can play the old curmudgeon, but deep down, he's an old softy. Ed, congratulations. This is no mistake. You deserve to be Winchester's Citizen of the Year.
Bob Fitzgerald. Ladies and gentlemen, the next speaker is representing a very important part of our community, the Winchester Hospital, and I'd like to introduce Glenn Welch. Glenn?
Thank you, John. I'm very pleased to be here tonight to honor Ed O'Connell. Prior to coming here, I did a little research today, and one of the things I did was ask Steve Powers if he could name one thing that those who've served with Ed could say he is famous for. And without hesitation, without a moment's hesitation, Steve said, Ed is the editor. Steve explained to me that Ed edits everything. Steve said that Ed always questions the use of grammar in the minutes of every meeting. The editor. I think of Ed as the consummate giver, and I don't mean the fella from the Send.com radio commercial. The man we are honoring here tonight is a real giver, a person that those of us in the asking business come across very rarely. Ed has given generously of his time, as well as his treasure, to our community and to our hospital. When I first met Ed nearly 4 years ago, he agreed to let me buy him lunch. During that lunch, Ed explained that he is an ardent supporter of the Winchester Hospital. Ed said he is a firm believer in the hospital's independence and that he wants it to continue to flourish. He said that although he is a man of modest means, he would be delighted to make another gift through a gift annuity. Later, when I asked if he would agree to appear in an ad with his dear wife, Barbara, as he affectionately calls her, Ed said yes before I could finish the question. Ed and Barbara also agreed to appear in a video presentation that the hospital did on charitable giving. And when I called Ed to see if he would come to the hospital to meet Dale Lodge and provide some insight to Dale about this community, Ed said, yes, I would be delighted, before I could finish the question. Ed reminds me of the Energizer Bunny. He keeps giving and giving and giving. Hours and hours of service to his community and many generous gifts to his hospital. So tonight, I'm here on behalf of the Winchester Hospital family to present Ed with the Energizer Bunny Giver Award. And it just, and Ed, I just have something else to ask. Ed, something else to ask. Can Can you give us a parking solution at 41 Highland Avenue?
We'll put our thoughts on that.
Thank you. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Glenn. I couldn't help but notice when I looked out, when you get up, Glenn, the guy you were sitting next to, who I don't think has had an opportunity to move around very much. There's a gentleman sitting at that table who may be intimately familiar with a lot of people. He delivered a lot of the people in this room. And I see he's back from Florida, where he had a recent illness and is coming back strong. Dr. James McDonough. Stand up there. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, there's another gentleman here. Every year we try to invite somebody to speak who's not from Winchester. It's very difficult. We have to make arrangements on the green card, and we also have to do a screening. But this year we're very fortunate to find somebody who was the former head of the school committee up in, school superintendent actually, up in Woburn, and now is the director, executive director of the Massachusetts Association of School Superintendents, and is also the chairman of the Winchester Hospital, Mr. Paul Andrews.
Thank you very much, John. Let me just briefly say that they make the comment that you stand up to be seen, speak up to be heard, and sit down to be appreciated. So I'm going to try to be very brief. Let me just a quick comment, and that is to say that I think in Winchester we are blessed, all of us, whether we're in Woburn or Winchester, with the presence of this gentleman behind me to my right. John Sullivan is truly an outstanding person as a moderator and has kept this program moving tonight. And I'd like to have a round of applause for John Sullivan. John is a unique talent that I think we very much take for granted. The tuxedo needs to be back by midnight, so in the Dale Lodge. The shift's a change at the hospital, Dale, in about an hour or so. It's great to say hello to Ed O'Connell. And Ed, there are many things we could say about you. Very quickly, I would just say a couple of things. One would be the fact that if you thought Ed O'Connell was humble, you were wrong. If you thought Ed O'Connell was a man of few words, you were also wrong. If you thought Ed O'Connell was patient, you're also wrong. If you thought Ed O'Connell was an informal dresser, you are very wrong. I know Ed O'Connell as an educator, as very much involved with our hospital. I know him as a gentle man and a great person for this community. And so it's also with a great deal of pleasure, Ed, that I'm giving you, by the way, here, thinking of what I could bring down to you tonight from the great city of Woburn. I did bring down to you a vial that I've kept with me all day to bring you a sample of water from Woburn. So I'd like to give that to you as kind of a little bit of a gift. Congratulations, Ed.
Thank you very much, Paul. Ladies and gentlemen, we're very honored tonight to have the Commissioner of Education for the Commonwealth of Massachusetts join us, Mr. David Driscoll. David?
Thank you, John. And let me say I appreciate, John, from you and the committee giving me special consideration and getting me on before 7 so I could get out of here to my next event. Barbara, you're a saint. I'm happy to do something that hasn't been done tonight. We've heard all too much about Ed's history and what he's added. In case anybody left anything out, he added it back in. But one thing people haven't really talked about, and you think about his great service across the board, there's one thing we miss, and that is his great passion for children. As a matter of fact, if you saw him come in tonight, he came in with a chair for his grandchild. So I'm going to take just a couple of minutes to speak for the young children of the world. And I have Father Foley's honor, some letters, some statements that were written from 6-year-olds to God. Dear God, thank you for my baby brother, but what I prayed for was a puppy, said Joyce. Father, you like this one? Dear God, I went to this wedding and they kissed right in church. Is that okay? Neil. Dear God, it rained for our whole vacation, and is my father mad? He said some things about you that people are not supposed to say. But I hope you won't hurt him anyway. Your friend, but I'm not going to tell you who I am. Dear God, please send me a pony. I never asked for anything before. You can look it up. Dear God, I bet it is very hard for you to love all the people in the world. There are only 4 people in my family, and I can never do it. And finally, John, in the interest of time, dear God, maybe Cain and Abel wouldn't try to kill each other so much if they had their own rooms. It works for me and my brother. Let me just say a couple of things about Ed. I thought of the word, in the interest of time, chip. C, character and class. H, humor and honesty. I, integrity and involvement. P, proud and rightfully so, and principled. People said, isn't it nice that you're here? Ed O'Connell has been a long, loyal friend. There is nothing that would have kept me away tonight. Thank you very much.
George watched the Goslings swim. And they swam, and they swam.
From birth to age 3 are the most important years in a child's brain development. The time that defines who they become.
They saw a little baby.
81, 83.
David Driscoll, Commissioner of Education for the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. Thank you, David. Ladies and gentlemen, the next speaker is really a group, and they are probably out on a weekend pass, so we got to get them out. Connie McCool and the VO group, please. Those people that are on any heart medication might want to.
We're ready. Are you ready? We just have to get dressed.
How many wines did you have? You're not dressing up here.
And you're not leaving because you have to help. And we need Eddie.
Hey, I'm not, I wasn't paid to participate.
John, as the moderator, would you please get Mr. O'Connell, our honored guest, and bring him up here?
Mr. O'Connell, I would like you on the stage. The Jenks Center has asked me to advise you that they have no liability. Yeah. I don't know. You want him to sit down?
That'd be nice. Not too close to the edge.
I'm over the edge already.
You paid $40 for this. Yeah.
Is Mark enjoying himself?
Ready?
I'm beginning to wonder whether we should have kept that school open.
We don't forget.
I was with you.
All right, now, John, we do have a job for you. Finally, he got to the girls. Is everybody ready? Okay, we're going to need your help, so pay attention. Oops, I got the wrong note.
John, this is your job. You have got to get this to the Chrysler bounce or not? Not yet. Okay. When we tell you. You know, don't mess up.
Yeah.
Don't ruin
Okay, here we go. Whoops, maybe.
Okay.
We're not as tall as the men.
But we're better.
Okay.
You like our outfits?
The friends of Eddie O'Connell are here. We've come to tell you a really fine and fantastic story. It's called The Frog Prince. The story began. Isn't he great?
Get the granddaughter. Go ahead.
Okay. The story began one summer morning in 1967. You see, we were sitting by a stone wall near a cute little house on Oneida Road. It's a sunny and green kind of place, just what frogs like, especially the Irish variety. And on this particular morning, the bees were buzzing, the birds were soaring, and the frogs were doing what we do best, sunning and searching for talent to lead our town. We were just sitting around at the edge of the lawn when a big moving van pulled up, nearly crushing us. But alas, out came the cutest little Irish man we'd ever seen. And as you can imagine, we're pretty partial to folks who like green. He was full of energy and eager to spread his goodwill. Well, what a perfect addition to our special world. So once again, I'm going to ask you to help us when we ask for you. So, without further ado, here's the story of how it all happened.
Sorry, Eddie.
Long ago and far away, a cold and cheerless Winchester day, in his search for deeds to do, to show his bravery through and through, he came upon a group so sad, about to lose the school they had. Everybody!
Hey, come on, John, it's your turn.
They call him Sir Eddie the Brave, and history one day will rave. He's valiant and daring and noble of bearing, courageous and gallant, a mountain of talent. No wonder folks curtsy and wave. He's Eddie, Sir Eddie the Brave.
You know, John loves this role, can't you tell? The bearer of this dreadful news had just returned from his Antigua cruise. I love that line. While we were in our deep despair, our frog arrived and said, "Here, here. Babada, babada, bring the champagne. There seems to be trouble in our domain." Get ready, girls. A little bit of bubbly, a little bit of chat, a vote of town meeting, and that was that. Come on, John. Come on.
Sir Eddie the Brave, and history one day will reign. He's noble and daring and noble of bearing and courageous and gallant, a mountain of talent. No wonder folks curtsy and wave. He's Eddie, Sir Eddie the Brave.
You know, John, a little bit of enthusiasm would help.
For this kingdom we love, so tried and true, this frog had many more things to do. His family to care for, his races to run, His volunteer work was hardly done. I got her line.
The library, town hall, and the schools that we've seen. Hooray for our frog! It's not easy being green. They call him Sir Eddie the Brave, and history one day will rave. He's valiant and daring and noble and bearing, courageous and gallant, and a mountain of talent. No wonder folks curtsy and wave. He's Eddie, Sir Eddie the Brave. I'm not singing it again.
This frog was not perfect, quite naughty in fact. So John, our MC, who's stiffing us right now, will take care of him.
With a kiss and a ribbit and a whole lot of fun, the magical deed will now be done.
Wait a minute, we gotta get the glitter, hold on.
Actually, we're quite fast. This moved real quick. Shush! Obviously, that makeup you got from John Lane is wearing off. Okay. I don't have any more children in the system. I'm fine.
You still got taxes.
Okay, Pat, be good at
All right, okay. This is my big moment, Eddie.
finale, hold on.
All right. With a wave of the wand and glitter galore, woo! We crown you Prince Eddie, a frog no more. That's it, Josh.
There you go, John.
Yes, very good.
Oh, wait a minute, excuse me.
Hey, John, who you on the hook?
1, 2, 3.
Don't give up your day work. Jeez, I gotta, this isn't worth the $1,000 I got. That was Connie McCool, Pat Minahan, and Linda Pickering.
Watch it going down there, otherwise it's really slippery.
I apologize for that, folks.
We're the lawyers. I'm gonna sue.
I hate to do this to you, Judy, after to follow that act, but ladies and gentlemen, Judy Muja. Former member of the Board of Selectmen, former recipient of this award. Hey, you're over. It's done.
It ain't over till it's over.
We're not even sure we got your $40. Judy Muja.
Not yet. This isn't fair. What a fabulous act. Well, listen, we got to go back a little bit. Now, you've heard about how Eddie runs. Around the lake, through the neighborhoods, off to foreign lands for office, or offices, I should say. Now, listen, most of you are from Winchester, right? And you know how campaigns used to be, right? Coffees, car toppers, newspaper ads, that kind of thing. Did you notice that Eddie's last few campaigns, he announced he wasn't going to campaign? He was running, he would not campaign. There was a reason. Go back to 1985. Wade Welch mentioned 1985. Yeah. I was running for selectman for the first time, Ed for school committee for the first time. Now, this is a man, you've heard tonight, with a serious resume, a resume to be proud of. Local, state, national, international. Je parle un peu de français. No. Well, I'm not international. I wasn't then, anyway. and I really don't have a resume to speak of. So why does it matter? Why did the famous Ed O'Connell quit campaigning? I'll tell you why. In March of 1985, just before Election Day, Ed and I ran, remember, our big, most expensive political ads, okay? Ed highlighted his experience, his whole resume. Mine had nothing but a long list of supporters' names in tiny little print. You have to fit them all in, right? And what really happened was a paper who shall remain nameless ran the ads together with the photos transposed. So I got a degree, I got an international reputation. Eddie got nothing, because unless you want a nursing degree and a stint on the FinCom, he got nothing. What he got was a headline saying, "We endorse Judy Muja." Well, I wasn't a fly on a wall at his house. I don't know whether you got a chuckle or not. But I mention this because that was 1985. This is the year 2000. And it happened again. But we saved your apples, Eddie. You may know that the sister city had a group just go to France, had a wonderful time, and Chris Connolly at the Woburn Times was helping put together an article about the wonderful visit. But at the same time, Eddie, of course, was named Citizen of the Year. Remember that night? And the paper came out the next day. I think it happens to all of us, you know. You don't know what's going to happen. And Bill Ryerson catches you every time, like that, okay? Remember the picture of Eddie? Well, I was over there working on the French article, and they were just coming out with the proof, and I don't know whether, you know, they have all the photographs in a box. I don't know what they do over there, you know, but when they goof, they goof. And I just want you to be suitably grateful that I was there, because this is the proof goof, Eddie. They did it again. They put my open mouth picture instead of yours. But, you know, I said, Chris, they got the wrong picture. So listen, the paper came out. Who would know? There you were with Patrick Hall, and it was all perfect. Well, like somebody else said tonight, anyone who can run for office against Ed O'Connell deserves a real place in heaven. I don't know how you do it, but it's enormously impressive, and nobody's given as much as you have. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Judy. Next, ladies and gentlemen, is, let's see who is next here. Oh, we got that Connie McCool group. I got that. Thought they were on twice here for a minute. Ladies and gentlemen, at this time I'd like to introduce a former selectman, a good friend of the recipient here, Al McDonald. Where's Al? Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Appreciate it. Father Tom Foley, Commissioner Dave Driscoll, so many distinguished guests in the O'Connell family. What a pleasure to think back on Ed's history of 30-plus years, which, as we know, is at least 20% of the town's history. And Ed's political history is really a story about the lifetimes that we've all had here when we think of the people that have served us. John mentioned earlier he didn't know anybody that has served so many terms on 3 boards, and I don't know, that's 11 elections, Eddie, over the years for 3-year terms, and I don't know from my records anybody that's done more than that. And when you think that of the people that Eddie ran with and served with, just those that he was elected with, as I was looking back at my notes on this, that Andy Nichols and Ed were serving together on the library board. Andy's still very active with the Winchester Savings Bank Audit Committee and some other things around town, but Ed was also elected when he ran for school committee with Harry Shuffalo. He was elected next on the Board of Selectmen with Wade Welch. He was, I'm sorry, I said school committee, Board of Selectmen. When Ed first ran for the Board of Selectmen, he ran Harry Sheffalo came back on for his second time around, but then Ed came on with Wade Welch. He came on with Mark Lombardi the next time. When he was running for the school committee, he did it with Kathy Gatto coming on with him. Next with Donna Brandt Landry, then with Connie Maycole, and the last 2 times with Kathy Bodie. And that's quite a list of people when you think back of the years that all of those folks have had in the town of Winchester. Tremendous service. Eddie's years in the library were relatively controversy-free, with the exception of what might have been termed a miscue on magazines delivered to the library. I think the rumor was that there were certain magazines that Barbara wouldn't allow delivered to the house, and Ed thought they should be on the library list and to be examined for literary merit, but I'll let Ed tell the whole story on that one. I know Ed's years on the Board of Selectmen best, and they were a lot of fun for all of us who served together. From 1980 to 85 were my years with Ed. And our group included Wade Welch, it included Mike Sirocco, John Williams, Mark Lombardi, and myself. With the exception of John Williams, who's too gentlemanly to grab the mic unless it's offered to him, we had a very hard time in those days getting a hold of the mic, John, didn't we? That was quite a group. Dan Kennedy was writing for the Woburn Times and Chris Connolly in those days. And I know I had a comment made to me one time downtown by a good friend who had been active in my little campaigns. He said, gee, I don't read about your comments in the papers very much. I said, hey, with Mike Sirocco and Wade Welch and Eddie and others, we don't get our chance to, we're not as quotable as those guys. But we really relied on Ed, and I miss Mike Sirocco quite a bit. He should be here tonight, really, because he and Ed were anchors, really, on those boards. We used to have what we called the open session at the end of the board meetings. We actually went for a couple of years till 1:30 in the morning before we changed the rules. It got kind of crazy, but we had an open session that would start about 11 o'clock at night for selectmen to comment on what's on their minds. And I remember just timing Mike Sirocco one night for the fun of it, so we didn't interrupt him. He went 25 minutes without drawing a breath on some issue of the moment. Because Eddie always felt compelled to match him, you know, whatever it was. But
I had more oxygen in him.
that's right. He had a good bit. My favorite with Eddie and Mike was we had a vote on a workers' comp issue one night, or a town employee issue, and we had a lot of debate, and Mike Sirocco made a long speech, and I made a couple of remarks about it, and we were on the losing end, Mike and I, on a 3-2 vote. And next Monday we came back, and Eddie said, I'm going to move for reconsideration. Well, we had never done that before on the board, because in a sense, every Monday was a new Monday anyway. You could do new issues if you wanted, but Eddie moved for reconsideration, had Mike's and my vote, because we have already voted for the issue the week before. And Ed made a long talk and made the same remarks, I thought, that Mike had made the week before, and I thought I had made too. So Mike and I are looking at each other like that, and now he makes the motion to approve it. We approve it 3-2. Next day, the headline is Ed O'Connell saves the day. You know, that was phenomenal, but that was all right. Yeah, that was all right. Now, Eddie's a man of strong opinion, as you know, and not that I might not be, but I had learned parliamentary procedure under some pretty strong Massachusetts speakers over time, and I sort of knew that the chair was always right unless you had a moral disagreement with the chair. And for 1 year, 1981 to 82, he was chair of the Board of Selectmen, and I was his vice chairman. A very pleasant year, and Eddie would call me pretty much every Sunday night and say, tomorrow night, here's what I want to do, such and such, such and such. I said, oh, yes, Mr. Chairman, sounds good to me. All right, Mr. Chairman, fine. That went on for 52 weeks. I got to be chairman the next year in the succession chain, and Eddie was still on the board, and the first meeting we're going to have is to decide on vice chairman, and there was some disagreement as to who should be vice chair. Nobody had 3 votes. I was the swing vote. So I called Eddie on the phone. I said, Ed, I got a great idea tomorrow what we can do to avoid a controversy so the board's all together 5-0. I give him my plan. Eddie says, oh, I could never agree to that. Eddie learned his parliamentary procedure from John Foster Dulles, I think, or something like that. Always had a great story. Eddie's always got great stories. And just my favorite one, and John will remember this, I bet, at town meeting, Eddie came down after we had a long debate on things and started off his message, John, said, basta. And then he had a long story that was a word, a foreign word that meant enough. Now, none of us in the audience, of course, knew that. And John was just hoping that Ed would go his full 5 minutes, which he did. And the bell rang over here, Carolyn Ward's bell rang, and you could hear John go into his mic, basta. And then John says, I hope that means enough. I had one chance when Eddie was running his last election, and we had the League of Women Voters Day. Pascal. I gave it to him. I gave him the chance. I gave him the chance. I did. One time I let Eddie run about 3 minutes beyond one of these bells at the League of Women Voters because he was telling a great story, and I had to let it go. I will just say that Eddie had a lot of firsts. He was on the Board of Selectmen when we had the first restaurant license, and we opened up Randall's Restaurant with a liquor license that already had been there with John Drugas running it. Eddie was on the Board of Selectmen when we had our first cable TV license issued. The first selectman on the Council on Youth, Eddie was. People had mentioned, Dave Driscoll mentioned the young people, and certainly Eddie was right there. He was our first representative on the Council of Youth, was there when we opened the youth center. I remember the first issue we had was the regulation of video games, Eddie. That was, think how time goes by when we worried so much about what we should do there. But we hired John Connery on for the economic development and a lot of things. And Eddie went on to be part of, at the Selectmen, the study group for the reuse of the Wyman, Noonan, Washington, Parkhurst schools, and then, of course, onto the school committee, where he was chairman his very first year. But there are two events that stand out, and I'll close with it, John. Two events and one little piece of history, and I'm all done. In 1979, a lot of people remember this, we had representatives from Winchester, England come over to Winchester, Massachusetts. And we had a tremendous visit. There was the Winchester Cathedral Choir came in, and we had a joint service, ecumenical service at the Church of the Epiphany, and it was a beautiful ceremony, and Eddie was our spokesman. We had a Department of State ambassador in Eddie, of course. He was our official greeter. And the town report that year read that Eddie gave a stirring speech that befitted well the town of Winchester and its residents. And you can well imagine his carrying the day for us there. The second occasion was in 1983, and you'll remember that we had Captain Rick Houck of the United States Navy here. And Rick Houck grew up in Winchester, was the co-pilot on the Challenger shuttle mission in 1983. And he came back into town to share his experience with us, to tell the kids in the high school what it meant to him to grow up in Winchester. And he was, of course, a great hero. And again, Eddie was our ambassador. And we had lunch right here in the Jenks Center. We had a beautiful dinner at the Winchester Country Club, sponsored by the Star, Winchester Star. And Eddie, not that it was a very inspiring day, and not that Eddie needs a lot of inspiration to get up for a speech, but he did a beautiful job. And the imagination can only do it justice, because he really did a beautiful job for us. And the last piece of history, Eddie, and it means a lot to me, is we probably had 300 meetings together over 5 years, every week once, and then some extras. And only once ever do I think we rode home together. I think Barbara dropped you off on a Saturday morning meeting, and you and I drove home together, and that was the day we interviewed 3 people to be town manager. And we had a gentleman from New Jersey, we had a gentleman from Connecticut, and we had a gentleman from Mansfield, Massachusetts, and nobody had 3 votes. And Eddie and I happened to drive home that day after talking to all 3, and Eddie and I shared a lot of discussion about why we were the 2 votes for one guy, and what we had to do to get that fellow to the town of Winchester, Chad Morra. We went back and we had a meeting with Wade and Mark and Mike on the board, and son of a gun, doesn't it come full circle? All the great comments that you made, Eddie O'Connell, about Chad Morra, and I hope I made a few, we had Mike Sirocco making the speech at the next meeting like it was his, like he thought it all up. It came full circle around, and of course Mike had our votes, and Wade and Mark thought so too, and 5-0 was the issue. But all I can say is, aren't we the lucky ones, Eddie? And we're especially lucky having you with us. God bless. Thank you very much.
Now, ladies and gentlemen, we only have 2 more quick remarks. The next speaker is Josh Alper. Josh, former member of the Board of Selectmen, and now on the ZBA. Former ZBA, former selectman, now on the ZBA. Conservation Commission, and former aluminum siding salesman.
Well, with apologies to William Shakespeare, He could have been a Roman, this one. Apparently, a word leaked out to the Board of Selectmen. Friends, Winchesterites, countrymen, lend me your ears. We come to praise Ed O'Connell, not to bury him. The good that men do lives after them, and the ill is oft interred with their bones, and so let it be with Ed. Now, I am no orator, as Ed is, with the wit, the words, the worth, action, utterance, and power of speech to stir men's blood, but, as you know me, a plain, blunt man who this evening honors a friend and fellow citizen. Indeed, there are those who might say our worthy subject tonight is antique, a relic, but behold, the living cantankerous flesh before us. He denies this rumor. Besides, it's not the artifact of Ed that I have come to expose, although I will in fact get around to praising him in a moment, but instead some real artifacts discovered just this week in the collections of the late Harvard archaeologist Frederick Ward Putnam in a barn on the west side of town. Now, after Professor Putnam finished his work on earthen mounds dating from 800 BC in Adams County, Ohio, where he spent the 1880s restoring a serpent effigy, he apparently went to work on Ed. And here is some of what we found in Professor Putnam's fascinating collection. First, we all know about Ed's prowess in foot races. To put it plainly, he doth bestride the narrow world like a colossus, and we petty men walk under his swift legs and peep about to find ourselves dishonorable graves. We also know that in primitive cultures such as that in which Ed was raised, you either talk your way out of a messy situation or you run. Now, the best runners, in other words, are typically the worst talkers. When Professor Putnam came across the kitchen midden of the O'Connell clan, filled with many centuries of effluvia and detritus, he was faced with a profound anthropological puzzle. Clear evidence of a runner whose tongue was even quicker than his feet. And this led Putnam to form his influential theory of the O'Connell man. The missing evolutionary link, which unfortunately he was unable to find evidence for in other human specimens. Still, shortly before he died, Putnam may have solved part of his greatest mystery. Among the O'Connell relics, apparently dating from before Ed received femur and heart-lung transplants from a Kenyan marathoner, which, by the way, he's also documented in the find. This is also documented. We found several last place medals. This is honest to God last place medal. Last place, it says. These you do not find on the O'Connell mantelpiece. According to Dr. Putnam, Ed apparently learned to talk his way out of any situation at an early age, and then, only then did he work on his running. Putnam's famous last words, recorded by a niece, were, "O'Connell man, a hoax." The Putnam collection also includes a number of volumes from the lost O'Connell Library, including a very slim volume. This is the Ed O'Connell Book of Polite and Politically Correct Jokes. And there was a book of grammar entitled How to Write and Speak Real Good. But the one volume that particularly drew our attention was the Oxford American Dictionary of Bawdy Stories and Utterly Inappropriate One-Liners. Now, this has been given to school committee woman Beth Ladow, who needed it, but she discovered that all the funny pages were already torn out. Finally, we found an extremely old relic that baffled even Professor Putnam's scientific acumen. Our crack carbon dating team of experts has a report on the precise age of this item. Is Betsy Krager present?
Why, yes, I am, sir.
Could you report on the age of the item?
Yes, the Carbon Dating Committee has worked exhaustively over the last several weeks with experts from MIT, confirmed our results with Harvard, and even had a brief consultation with the Kelsey Museum of Antiquities in Ann Arbor. And we can state categorically that this relic dates from the Winchester municipal elections of 1905.
Now, before we bring this last item out, let me refresh your memories a bit. We all know that in his 31 years plus of town service, Ed has run many campaigns. We've heard exhaustively about this tonight. By my count, about 11 elections. Now, it's been a point of great pride with Ed that in none of these campaigns, which stretch beyond the living memory of this young and vibrant audience, indeed, it goes back so far that the memory of man runneth not. To the contrary, Ed claims that in none of these campaigns has he stooped to the use of car top signs. Instead, he's relied on old-fashioned door-to-door campaigning with his wife Barbara, a style which they undoubtedly perfected during their years dodging stray bullets in Latin America. Ed has said in his unmistakable dialect that Professor Putnam, the late Professor Putnam, called the Paleolithic O'Connell Irish Yankee patois. One of the things I'm proud of is that in all my years in Winchester, I never asked anyone to have a roof rack sign saying O'Connell for this or that. I think they're ugly. Well, guess what we found amongst Professor Putnam's treasure? School committee, library trustee, and selectmen.
You will hear from my solicitor, John Sullivan.
Ed, we're happy to say that the Putnam estate has agreed to donate this specimen to your personal collections. So, dear friend and fellow townsman, we have not buried you. No, we've unearthed you. Accept this relic in the certain knowledge that free at last from the yoke of elective office, you now enter a new realm where we give off the harsh criticism and noxious whining with which we endow our elected officials. And as I promised in my opening remarks, we offer them praise. May rudeness ever be a sauce to your good wit, which gives men stomach to digest your words with better appetite. Winchester, thou hast lost the breed of noble bloods. Ever since the great flood, was it famed with more than one man? Till now, what could those that talked of Winchester say, but that her wide walks encompassed but one man? Ladies and gentlemen, our Citizen of the Year, Ed O'Connell.
Josh Alpa, ladies and gentlemen. Well, I think I can do one more. Peter Van Aken. Former winner and former member of the school committee. And I understand I have one more after this? Yes, okay. You know, did you ever think, I didn't think at the beginning of last week that you could stand on your feet for 4 hours and anything could be worse than Peggy Schleicher and Mary Pronsky reconsidering all the motions. I was wrong. Peter Van Aken.
What a great introduction. My question, John, is do the previous speakers get paid by the word, or what's the deal there? I did want to start off by thanking my new fashion consultant, Arthur Griffin. And I wanted to suggest, John, you talk to him yourself. Eddie, I didn't serve on the school committee with you, notwithstanding the speaker's previous comments. I never had the pleasure or the pain of that particular event. But my own children, in fact my son, traversed the entire Winchester school system while you were sitting on the board. And I think I can speak for many in this room who appreciate they were the beneficiaries of your dedication and your wisdom over those many years. I'm going to keep this brief for obvious reasons, and I know I'm going to take a page out of your book because you, of course, speak very briefly every time. I did discover recently, Ed, that you had a secret email account when you were on the school board. Now, as everybody knows, you never used the email to communicate with anybody, but apparently you did use it to jot down your thoughts from time to time, especially during particularly slow school committee meetings, of which there were a few, and of which you probably attended more of than any other living person except possibly Mary Pronsky. The email goes as follows. Thoughts from the Lynch School Library. From the Lynch Schoolhouse Library, looking lazy through the trees, there's a superintendent sitting, and I know she thinks of me, for the school board's always meeting, and the recess bells they say, "Come ye back, ye faithful servant, come and spend another day. Come ye back to Lynch Library, where the school board does it best. Come and hear parental concerns from the East Hill and the West. Hear again about school closings and fighting MCAS stress. Do the best for our dear children, but do it with less. Hear again about the sped and the water coolers cost, and the endless budget cutting and the town meeting battles lost, and the buildings falling round us from extended overplay. Some have a better plan for all if you do it just their way. But when all these things are considered and put up to the test, all the years I spent in service, those at Lynch were of the best. For the school board's always meeting, and the recess bells they say, "Come ye back, O faithful servant, come and spend another day." Thank you, Eddie.
Thank you very much, Peter. Ladies and gentlemen, our last speaker today represents the group that is truly indebted to Ed, and he represents the veterans here in Winchester. I think there's probably no other living person in the town of Winchester now that has devoted more of his own time to the veterans here in Winchester. The possible exception of that is the now gone Mike Sirocco, who, like Ed, has devoted a tremendous amount of effort behind the scenes and mostly unheralded. And it's my pleasure to bring you Adam Vanyo, who is the commander of the VFW here in Winchester.
Okay, thank you, John. To Wade Welch, rest assured the Christopher Columbus Italia Mutual Aid and Benefit Society is thriving and well, and we do have vacancies, however. We could have rented the hall over there. Last I knew, I thought I was commander of the VFW last year and commander-elect this year. But you know Ed, he's got a lot of talents. However, I would like to make this announcement. He is chairman of the Memorial Day Parade, which will be Monday, May 29th. And he is also chairman of the Poppy Drive, which he does a great effort in raising fund money for scholarships for the VFW. And that's going to be Saturday, May 27th at the Town Exchange. Recently, Ed and I went to a wake of one of our dear departed veterans who was a member of the Veterans of Foreign War Post 3719. I really made my first big mistake of the evening. I asked Ed if he would say a few words on behalf of veterans. Well, I'm certainly glad John Lane was paying attention before locking up for the night, or else I would have been keeping our dear departed comrade company for the night. And this is a true story. It was. My only regret is I didn't take that short speech I could have marketed and sold it as a sure cure for insomnia. Seriously, one good thing we can all say for Ed, we're always glad to see him. Go, leave, depart. And my dad always said, God bless his soul, he always said, if you can't say anything good about anyone, don't say anything at all. While we're enjoying this moment of silence, we can all join in a prayer for Barbara. Just like my wife, Lovey, she claims she's going to heaven because she's going through hell on earth with me on earth, and it goes for him. And in closing, I would like to say Ed is a great veteran, and we're proud and happy to have him, whatever he does, and everything he does for us. And like I always say, God bless Grandpa Vaniel for coming over this country, and God bless America.
Thank you very much, Adam. Ladies and gentlemen, at this time, it's my pleasure to introduce Consuelo, Ed's daughter, to give a few remarks for the family. And we're about ready to find out whether what the truth is about Ed's length of speech runs in the bloodline. I have bad vibes. Consuelo.
This is very hard to come. Many good acts to follow, and I'm going to disappoint you tonight because I call this lovely town Winchester. I don't, unfortunately, have my father's wonderful command of the English language. I guess I just want to say a few things about my father. If I was asked to describe him, I would say that he was truly a Renaissance man, a man who has incredible intelligence, an incredible love of life, an incredible love of the country, and an incredible love of his family. We all know about his service. We all know about how much he loves to run. He's never come home and told us what he's done and accomplished. But let me tell you that as a child growing up in some very difficult countries and difficult situations, my father always made sure that it was a very special home life that we had. As a child, I can remember when we arrived in any new country, into our new house, there was always a book there for me. Always the teacher, always the educator. He made sure that our birthdays and our Christmas were special, particularly in Africa, which were really very difficult places to live. He has been a remarkable person for me to follow in his footsteps. My parents have been wonderful people, wonderful role models, and I'm so proud to have them here, and I'm so proud that they've been with me all my life, and especially for my children, and for my nieces, and for my nephew. Daddy, I think that the boys obviously have learned something from you, and that they're going to be great citizens too. And I want to thank all of you for coming here tonight. I really have nothing more to say, but to thank all of you for being such wonderful people and friends.
She's now my favorite O'Connell. So far in first place. Ladies and gentlemen, it's my pleasure at this time to welcome the President of the Winchester Chamber of Commerce, Patrick Hall. Pat?
Thank you, Brian. I'm going to hear about that one tomorrow. You can count on that. We've come to the point in the evening where it's my job to issue some thank yous because there are a lot of people that worked hard to make this evening possible. And I'd like to start off by thanking Kathy Alexander and her able assistant, Barbara Tobiasen, for all the hard work they did putting this evening together. Also, the meal that you enjoyed this evening was prepared by Main Course. And the flowers that we're all enjoying were from Mahoney's. So we urge you to patronize those fine establishments, both of whom are members of the Chamber of Commerce, of course.
They were ordinary people who half a century ago did nothing less than help save the world.
and yet there is no national memorial to honor their sacrifice. It is time to say thank you.
Help build the National World War II Memorial.
Ladies and gentlemen, I think we've heard a lot about the gentleman to my left tonight, and you've heard from his family. That's right, that's the left. Are you sure Mahoney's meant to sell? Did you really want to send that up here? We thought that was from Lane's. Either that or it should have gone to Saratoga. Ladies and gentlemen, the man on my left has been discussed in great detail tonight. And Ed, as I introduce you here as the outstanding citizen to say a few, accent on the word, few words, I would like to say that if I could just summarize the feelings here tonight, is you've done your family proud. You've done your country proud, and you certainly have done Winchester proud. Ed O'Connell.
Thank you. Thank you much. Thank you. Actually, what has taken place in this room so far tonight confirms what Barbara has often said to me, that Eddie is a man who has no enemies, but his friends dislike him intensely. I remember well the great line by Groucho Marx when he had been proposed for membership in a prestigious New York City organization. And he said, "I care not to belong to any organization that would have me as a member." So I'm not sure I want to be on that list of Citizens of the Year. And there are people, believe it or not, who have asked Barbara or asked me, how did they ever pick you? And we know how. Barbara and I requested, I believe it was 86 friends and acquaintances to write to the Chamber of Commerce. Kathy Alexander told me that they did receive 4 letters. 2 recommended that the chamber consider me, and 2 suggested otherwise. But even those 2 did say nice things about me. They referred to me as a sweet old boy. At least I think that's what SOB means. Mary Pronsky told me that she had sent a letter recommending my consideration for the last 7 years. So I sent Mary a check for $2.31 to cover her postage costs. I got to mention a few people who are in the audience. Some of them may actually have gone by now because some of you people ate so much of my time. I certainly appreciate that Dave Driscoll, the Commissioner of Education, was here tonight. He's not just a great educator, he's a great friend of mine. And is Kathy Buckley still here? Okay, Kathy Buckley, former assistant superintendent in Winchester, was here with Dave.
and she's active in the mass educational television program now and doing very, very well over there. Besides Glenn Welch, Dale Lodge from the hospital is here. Dale, would you just stand up for a minute? There are probably two institutions that are prominent in my life and Barbara's, and we look upon them as the organizations that we most like to support. Certainly the Winchester Hospital. We are proud to have that hospital in our community. And secondly, for 25 years, I've been on the board of directors of the Cardinal Center for the Spanish, and Barbara has recently joined that board with me, and we have great respect for the work that they do, and are proud to be a small part of it. And of course, in speaking of worthy charitable institutions, I better hurry up and mention the Immaculate Conception Parish, or I'll be in deep trouble. And I don't know, sometimes things happen that maybe you didn't really plan for them to happen. But I ran for office for the first time in 1969, and we had come here. We arrived in Winchester in October of '67, and I was downstairs one evening reading the Winchester Star, and I believe there are people from the Star and from the Daily Times here tonight. And Barbara was upstairs, and I shouted up, Barbara, I'm going to run for town office. And she said, you've been drinking, come upstairs. Well, she was right, but what I said, I meant. And I had noticed that there was an election, and that there were two incumbents who were going to be reelected automatically if they weren't challenged to the library board. And I went down the next day and took out papers, and the next issue of the Star said there will be a contested election for the library board if someone named Edward O'Connell returns papers. And of course, that's all I needed. And down I went getting the signatures by myself, and went door to door with a mimeographed handout, and I won the election. And I won it because in those years, the election was the first Tuesday in March, and we had a genuine blizzard. And it was the first time in the history of Tufts University that they canceled classes for the day. So I posted myself at one precinct, the Noonan School, Precinct 6, and Barbara was at the Wyman School, Precinct 4, and we stayed there all day, and it was freezing, and I was over at the Noonan School, half frozen to death, and Lieutenant Jack McHugh and Sergeant Roland Roy were on the police detail there, and Lieutenant McHugh came up to me, and I thought, oh, he's going to make me move further away, and he said, we're going out for some coffee. Can we get you some? And some years later, things do go full circle. When there was a vacancy, when Connie Bowler retired, there was a vacancy, and the town manager was considering strongly appointing a candidate other than the one I favored. Should I share the secret with you? Jack McHugh. And Harry Sheffalo and I were of the same mind. So we both made Town Manager Grew aware, and this was one of Tom Grew's first major appointments, that he was going to encounter at least a split vote and maybe a majority vote against his selection. And lo and behold, Jack McHugh, his virtues were suddenly seen even by the town manager, and Jack became the chief of police. Is Jack still in the room? Jack? It's one of the things that I remember proudly. And every once in a while, you do things and they turn out right. And as far as Alan McDonald was mentioning some of the areas in which we were engaged that were significant to the Chamber of Commerce, and certainly the first liquor license, the bringing in of cable to the town of Winchester, and as I've told some people, when we brought cable in and the town got wired and they started filming live the meetings of the Board of Selectmen, people would come up to Barbara on the street and say, "Oh, you must enjoy watching Ed at the Selectmen's meetings," and Barbara would say, "We don't have cable." God, do you see what the price is? So, no, we've lived a life that has been more oriented towards spending my evening at meetings, and Barbara was in the school system and working as hard as she could. But you do get an investment in the town, and you get reimbursed for that investment, because there have been experiences that we've known and shared, and you can't put a value on it. You can't put a value on those things. It's the involvement, the knowledge that you are doing a service, the knowledge that you are contributing to the welfare of the town. And you know, if they gave a salary, I would vote against it. And I think, John, there was a time when we in Winchester were one of no more than 3 or 4 towns that did not offer even a modest stipend to the selectmen, say $1,500, $3,000, somewhere on that range. And I would feel almost insulted if the town of Winchester had offered me that kind of a payment, because the concept of service would be weakened by that. And this is a town that has been well served by its community. And as I look around the room tonight, God, I think there are at least 5, maybe 6 medical doctors here. So if anyone feels food poisoning, we can take care of you on the spot. I probably should mention, is Rocky Cazzo still here? Rocky, we have one table. I don't know why it's the furthest from me, but we have some of my dear friends from Tufts University, John Baronian from Medford, who is Mr. Tufts. He was a great football player. He was named to the All-Armenian team in 1949-50, and John was a trustee of the university, and his good friends from the athletic background raised money, and we built a brand new field house some years ago and named it the John Baronian Field House, and nobody deserved such an honor more than John. John, stand up.
My classmate, we're having our 50th reunion in a couple of days, Eddie and I.
Hey. I'm gonna knock it out. Next to him is another great athlete, but he played a sissy sport, basketball, Albie Tolman. Albie is living in Winchester. Stand up, Albie. And finally, the recently retired Director of Athletics, a great athlete himself at Delaware University, coach of Craig Morton, who was All-American at the University of Southern California, lives on Mason Street, Rocky Cazzo. Rocky, stand up. I'm going to close it. There's so many people. I'd like to name you all and hug you all. I think I've kissed 95% of the females, and I'm about to strike at the males. So I'm going to close this out with a hearty thank you. God bless all of you, and we'll do it again next year with someone else.